Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail Podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, welcome back. Mission Whitetail. Got our buddy Adam Hayes back on today. He is a regular now on the show. And what I thought we would talk about today is maybe the process or the obsession with one particular buck that you locate during a season. I know there are a lot of guys right now that have a deer in mind. Maybe they've gotten some nighttime pictures or they've, got some history with a deer they're trying to relocate. And coincidentally enough, Adam has got a really big deer that he is hunting or obsessing about, and I do as well. So what I thought we'd do is maybe let Adam start, and then I can ask some questions as he goes with his process of how he found this deer and then what kind of his strategy has been to get on the deer, because that'll be one perspective, and then I can dive into the one I've got here in South Carolina and some of the hurdles and some new developments that have just happened. So, Adam, welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
Always. Now, you guys killed a pretty nice one last night, didn't you?
Yeah, we got actually a target buck on the ground last night that I've been watching for a few years here at home. A buck that I was really hoping to get my nephew on last night. And we were out Saturday night for the opener, and the weather was just crap, raining all night. The stuff from the hurricanes made its way up here, and not complaining, we needed the moisture, that's for sure. But no luck Saturday night, and then last night, it rained all day yesterday, and last night it cleared off about an hour before dark. And man, I don't know what your experience is with it, but on those evenings where it's been raining all day or all afternoon and then it cuts off right before dark and clears off, it's like the deer just come out of the woodwork. And this was a buck, like I said, been watching for a few years. He's been really regular all summer and really had the farm, here at home set up to kill this deer early. That was the plan, and the plan came together last night, and Logan killed his best buck ever. We haven't put a tape on it yet, but I think he's probably going to be really close to cracking 170, so he's really excited about that.
Man, that's great. Yeah, I saw the picture of him and the footage. It is pretty prime. Couldn't have gotten better footage. And what I was blown away with was how dark that deer is. I mean, he's almost black.
Yeah, he is a dark animal. I'm pretty sure he's 6 years old, and he's just always been a darker animal. He's always had a dark rack, and it seemed like it was even darker this year for some reason. But, yeah, just a really cool deer. I couldn't believe how big, I knew it was a big animal, but when we got him on the ground last night and got up close to him, I couldn't believe the size. His neck's already all swollen up, and I'm sure this deer field dressed over 250 pounds. I mean, he's a mature buck. Like I said, I think he's probably 6, and I know there's a lot of deer here on the home farm that are breathing a sigh of relief today having him out of the way, because he's a big, aggressive animal, and I really was hoping we could get him on the ground early to hopefully let a couple of these other mature deer, into the farm and not getting pushed out, because he was a bully for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know Logan's pumped, man. He loves to hunt them, and you're a good uncle for taking him all the time, man. I know he's gotten a couple real good bucks with you, so yeah, kudos to you for taking him along and getting him really into the bow hunting stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's actually his third buck he's killed here on my home farm. I haven't even shot one yet here at home, waiting for a special deer to show up. But I think we got a lot better chance now that this big bully is out of the way, and it really came together. I normally like to wait until I've got the wind, the moon, and the weather, and we don't have a good moon right now. But if there's a time when I'm going to take a chance and dive in and try to kill a big mature buck, it's when he's making a mistake in daylight. When they're doing that, I don't care what the moon's doing, what the weather's doing. When they're making a mistake in shooting light, you got to dive in. And we had a terrible wind for us. I mean, it couldn't have been worse. It was perfect for the buck. I mean, because blowing right back into the woods, and he came out with the wind in his face, just as comfortable as he could possibly be, And it was one of those situations where I've got this one little pinch point on the farm that everything comes through there. And I put a Banks blind in that spot just for that reason, that if something's coming through there and we can't get in a tree and we need to be in there, that Banks blind was money. And I mean, he came within 18 yards of us last night, like I said, with the wind in his face, just as comfortable as he could be. And that's always been one of the biggest things for me, is you try to make a deer or a mature buck feel as comfortable as they can. And what's going to do that? How do you accomplish that? It's giving them the wind to their advantage, because they live and die by their nose. And it's what happened last night. He comes out of there with the wind in his face. Everything smelled perfect. We got some live decoys in the food plot. He's been in this one spot all summer, particularly because I put a new plot of alpha rack in there, man. Just loves the alfalfa. And we kind of doctored up the spot last night with some raw frozen scent, some multi-buck urine, so that urine, that buck urine was just, coasting right into the woods where he was coming out at. So, I mean, he really, that deer probably felt like he was doing everything right. He had the wind in his face. He could see deer. He could smell deer. Gave him exactly what he wanted, as far as food goes this time of the year. And, it just all came together.
Now, did you guys have the windows on that blind closed up until you shot? And so you just, like, you were running the camera and Logan got drawn and then you kind of slid it open and he shot?
Yeah, so like I said, the wind couldn't have been worse. I mean, blowing right to the deer. And I knew there was going to be a lot of deer in the plot before he ever came out when he did. So we had to keep the windows closed. I mounted an Ozonics in the blind, and I turned it on, when he came out into the plot to get it going before I cracked the window open. Obviously, you don't want to sit in an enclosed blind with an Ozonics going. Probably not the healthiest thing in the world to do. So I waited until right before that, and then we originally sprayed a bunch of Scent Thief right in front of the blind too. So, we had it just like everything else. It's a system. We got the buck urine out to attract them. We got the Scent Thief, hopefully to help. That stuff's supposed to numb a deer's sense of smell. And then obviously we've got the Ozonics going in the blind. So it's really a system like anything else. I don't really ever count on one thing to do the whole job. I'm trying to kill our scent, keep the deer's sense of smell at bay, with the Scent Thief, and then obviously a good attractant scent. So we were using everything that we could, because I knew as soon as we cracked that window open, it could be literally seconds. And I had Logan go ahead and draw his bow before I ever cracked that window open. I got the window up, got the camera on him, got a few seconds of pre-roll because he was kind of coming in, quartering towards us, but he ended up turning, gave him a perfect broadside shot at 18 yards. And, I mean, he just read the script, man, and he's a movie star now.
Yeah, that's right. And so he'll be on the Team 200 show next summer, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Well, good deal. Well, let's switch gears into kind of that obsession over a buck. And obviously you've played the dance or had the dance with quite a few of them over the years, and no surprise you've got another really big one to chase this year. And a lot of guys are in the same boat. A lot of our listeners right now are going, yeah, I got a target buck that I want to kill. I'm only getting night pictures of him. I don't know what to do. Should I bust in there and blow everything up right now, 1st of October, or should I, just stay back, So walk us through obviously I know a little bit more than most because you and I talk all the time, but you found this deer last year, or was it year before last?
The Ohio deer I've known about for 6 years now.
Okay.
So, I've got a lot of history with him. Got a pretty good idea of what he's done in the past, but it's not a deer that, lives on my farm. So I've got limited access to where I can hunt him. And, I'm just kind of approaching this deer like I normally do, with other deers that I don't want these deer knowing, they're being hunted at all. So, I've been using observation stands all summer, trying to, pinpoint what he's doing, get an eyeball on him, trying to pick up on some piece of the puzzle as to, the best place to set up on him. I've been running cameras and been fortunate to get a few, reveal pics and video clips of him. So, I've done pretty much all I've been able to do. I still don't know 100% of his travel route. I think that deer is probably going to, if and when he shows up on my farm, it's probably going to be late October. That's normally when he shows up. He's been in here earlier than that, but it's one of those situations where he's on a summer pattern in a bean field that was planted really late. The field was supposed to be rotated this year and switched to corn, but we had such a wet spring here in Ohio that the field was partially flooded and they didn't get in there to plant it until late, so they put beans in there. So, you got a situation where you've got soybeans that are still, green in different places in the field, and there's really no reason for him to leave. And I've got access to part of his summer pattern right now, but just like with a lot of other big deer this time of the year, man, they're doing the exact same thing every day, so they're very patternable and very killable, but they're doing it in such a small area that it makes it really tough. If you don't have stands pre-hung and know right where you need to be to kill them, it's tough to get in there to do any kind of scouting or to hang stands at this time of the year, because, I've seen where mature bucks this time of the year, they're not moving more than 100, 200 yards between where they're bedding and feeding. They're just not traveling. They're not moving much. And that sort of pattern goes right into, mid-October, into the October lull, which we've talked about that before and how difficult it is to kill a big deer in the lull. They're very killable because, like I said, they're doing the same thing every day. But just that tiny area that they're in, it's so tough to get in there and make a move on them without them knowing what's going on. You pretty much got to go in almost like a hang and hunt situation, go in, set up, and kill them that same night, because every time you go in and you don't get it done this time of the year, they're going to pick up on what you're doing, and the game's going to be up.
Yeah, so he didn't shift, though, did he? You got a lot of velvet pictures, velvet footage of him, and he's still in the exact same spot.
Yeah, he's still in a summer pattern, but I kind of have a feeling that his summer pattern might happen to be his normal pattern. He didn't have to move anywhere because those beans, were right there planted late, and he, I've seen bucks, move a mile away to a good soybean field in the summer, and I actually think, just given the situation and the circumstances this year, right where he's at, I think that's actually his core area.
Yeah, and he's one of the bucks that just is not transitioning. I've talked with some other guys about that. There'll be a bachelor group of bucks in an area, and let's say it's 4 bucks, 3 of them move out and 1 of them stays. And a lot of times, that's the older, mature deer that he stays. That's his core, and those other ones know, hey, he's going to be the ruler of the roost. And it doesn't, like Bobby always says, always and never are 2 words you never use in hunting, and that's very true. But a lot of times the most mature of the bachelor group will stay put if that's his actual core home area, because the other three know that they have no chance.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure that's the situation here, which is good and bad. Like I said, he's probably not going to make a move until, mid to late October. The way the moon and everything's hitting this year, a lot of guys are probably going to see a different season and different breeding season this year, because the way the full moons are going to hit, you're going to have some bucks keying on some hot does off of the full moon at the end of October. So I think you're going to have, a flurry of activity, which you normally get like the last few days of October is going to be about a week earlier. So I think you're going to get a flurry of bucks moving and following some does that third week. Probably a little bit of a lockdown the last week of October, on those does that are queuing off the early full moon. And then obviously in November, it's going to be kind of the same thing where you're going to see that lockdown probably a week to 10 days later than it normally is towards Thanksgiving. So I think the third week of October, I might have a good chance of him showing up looking for does, especially now that I've got, the biggest, most mature, aggressive deer off the farm now. Might be easier for him to move in and start looking for does. But yeah, I'm going to move in and start hunting that deer here next week, because we're going to get some cooler temperatures, and the moon gets good around the 6th or 7th of October. So I think there might be a chance of catching him making a mistake in daylight there, but it's going to be tough. But I mean, that's why we love it so much.
Yeah.
When you're chasing a specific buck and trying to figure him out and figure out what he's going to do before he ever does it. So,
well, let's get a little bit granular, if you will. I'm going to ask you some questions. So this year, summer rolls around, you start getting cameras out, you start doing some glassing. Phase one, how did you locate him? Were you glassing? Did you pull a camera? Do you text camera? Just bam, oh God, there he is? Or walk me through how you first located him, how you did that.
I couldn't find him. I wasn't getting any pictures of him. I was spending a lot of evenings glassing, where I thought he might be. Couldn't get an eyeball on him. And I ended up actually flying a drone over a couple spots in the evenings, spots that you couldn't see from anywhere unless you were right in the field, And that was how I found him. Found him with one other mature buck that I have known about for a few years. They kind of run together occasionally, and caught those two just tucked in behind a little patch of trees where, they were hidden from the road. They were hidden from, everything. Like I said, unless you were in that field or above them, like I was in the drone, you just would never know they were there. Even in the summer, it never ceases to amaze me. Even in the summer when they know they're safe and they're not being hunted, they can still be that secretive.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just tucked in a safe little spot where, I had to actually fly over top of them to get an eyeball on him. And then once I saw him, I was able to set up and start monitoring him a little bit better, knowing where he was at. So, but that's how I found him.
Yep. And then what was the next thing that you did after that? Once you found him, go through your, all right, I know where he is. What's your next move?
It's always to put up an observation stand. I like to be, at least 200, if not 300 yards away. Get up in a stand, wait for a good wind. You still don't want those deer smelling you. And grab a pair of binoculars and the spotting scope and set up on those nights. Even in the summer, they're still not out there every night. And I prefer to kind of focus my summer scouting when I'm in those observation stands around the moon or a good weather pattern. When you get a nice cool evening or an evening where it's rained in the afternoon, clears off. But I seem to, even in the summer, have my best luck at catching those big ones in the beans on those red moon nights. I really kind of focus most of my scouting, especially my out-of-state scouting, around those red moon nights.
Yeah, and then, I mean, what you're trying to – you're just trying to keep tabs on him, or you're like actually when you're in your observation stand going, okay, he's coming out right here. I'm looking at the map. He's got to be bedded right there. You're devising your plan. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, you're right. You're always trying to gather as much intel as you can. You know, any little piece to the puzzle you can pick up on. You watch how they enter fields, where they're entering the fields, the parts of the field where they like to go, how they exit the field, how the other deer enter the field. I mean, because, you know, you've got to be aware of where, you know, the rest of the deer are at too. You know, you can't set up and spook a bunch of does, you know, before he ever comes into the field. So it's just good to know how all the deer use the field, how they enter and exit, you know, the winds they're using. And just like I said, just try to gather, you know, as many pieces to the puzzle as you can.
What wind he's using, you know, if he is even using, you know, wind. A lot, you know, people say it doesn't happen, but man, I've seen some big deer come in with the wind the complete opposite of what they needed. You know, and so, yeah, I mean, you could see if he's real finicky about that, like he's not coming out in daylight unless he's got the wind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
always paying attention to the wind.
So phase 3, I guess. All right, you've located, you know where he is. You were talking about putting a line of trail cameras out on like your access area to see if he's coming off of where you can't get at him to where you can get at him. Talk us through a little bit of that.
Yes, I mean, even though I've been able to watch him a handful of times this summer, I could never really pin down how he was leaving this field. Never actually witnessed him leaving the field. And, you know, my access is kind of limited on where I can hunt and where I can be. So, you know, I kind of lined up, you know, 7 or 8 cameras on my end of the field, hoping to catch him coming through there to see if I could figure out what he's doing, you know, in the evenings, what direction I know what direction he was heading. He was heading my direction, but didn't really know where he was leaving the field, what he was doing. And yeah, I'd been running a bunch of cameras in there and still haven't been able to pick up what he's doing. So that's it's kind of a key, you know, piece to the puzzle that I've been missing. So unless he ends up, you know, coming by one of those cameras, I think I'm going to have to resort to, you know, diving in when I got a good wind that I think's safe for me, and when, you know, everything lines up, and dive in there and see what happens, see if I can get a look at him.
Well, and that, you know, that's a good point, is you've ruled out some of those areas. Like, he is not coming through here consistently at all, so I can scratch this one off the list. You know, I know that I'm not going to – that's what is so handy about the cameras, is that they can not only tell you what's going on, they can tell you what's not going on.
That's right. Process of elimination, for sure. Yeah.
All right, so you say around the 7th or 8th you're going to start actually trying to hunt him.
Yeah, we're supposed to get some cooler weather. Obviously, the moon should help. You know, trying to predict what they're going to do and when they're going to do it before they ever do it, and just trying to, you know, kind of stack the deck in my favor. You know, as many things as I can line up that's going to increase activity and increase my chances of that deer getting up and moving early. You know, I mean, he doesn't have to go more than a couple 100 yards, so I'm hoping, you know, wind, weather, moon, all that stuff's going to line up, and I really would like to be there, you know, when he finally does, you know, get in a spot where I could hopefully get a crack at him. So, and it could just be, you know, it could be one of those situations where I get back up in my observation stand where I'm safe, and just keep watching until I actually see him make the mistake, you know. That would probably be the safe bet. I know Miles Keller is the one. I read some stuff that he wrote back in the day, how he likes to hunt from the outside in and just keep gradually moving closer and closer until he knew the specific tree he needed to be in to kill that deer, and just, you know, sitting on the outskirts and watching from a safe distance with, you know, a good wind, and hopefully being able to get a look at him and see what he's doing and pin him down that way. So,
yep. And it's so interesting how much different the two deer are, the one you're hunting, the one I'm hunting, as far as terrain is concerned. I'll pivot over to the one I'm kind of obsessing about right now and really focusing on this season. And, you know, in a general, I guess, evaluation, he wouldn't be considered a world-class deer, but for our area, he is more than a world-class deer. I mean, he is an unbelievable buck for the river swamp that we hunt in. I guess the big difference is this is massive river bottom, right? There's cutover and pines and hardwoods. There's zero ag in this area. There's a few little food plots that they plant. There's a couple duck ponds that they've got fenced in. And so the observation is it's not possible. You know, you can't see more than, it's not an option. So what I did is, I guess I found the deer 3 years ago, and I'm assuming he was a 3 or 4 year old then. My gut says he was a 3, and he was nice then. And then I hunted him last year, and he was a better buck last year. And then this year he just really blew up, or not really blew up, but he put on quite a bit, and you can tell he's just a big old swamp buck that they just don't get to this age, because, you know, our season comes in August 15th, goes to January 1st, and it's rifles. And I calculated it the other day. In this river swamp area, there's a 4,000 acre tract, there's an 8,000 acre tract, a 1,200 acre tract, and a 2,200 acre tract. So I didn't do all that math, but that's a big swath of property, and there's over 80 people with rifles that hunt that area. You know, it's like a 4,500 acre club, a 2,000 acre family farm, a 1,200 acre club, and then an 8,000 acre club. And the 8,000 acre club and the 4,000 acre club have got over 40 members in each one of them. So it's nuts, the amount of pressure, and the fact that this buck has lived that long. But what I did is I found kind of the area he was in last year. Early season, I found some muscadines. There was a couple sawtooths that were, if it got windy, would drop a few early. There's some greenbrier. There was some food. There was a food source there, and I got a camera on it, and boom, he showed up. And I was like, okay, here we go. And not only did he show up, it was repeated. He was showing up every day, and he was not afraid to daylight. And I was like, all right, I'm going to kill this buck opening day. Felt really, really good about it. My camera was dying because I'd had it in there since early July. And I was going in like 3 days before the season to change the batteries out in it. And I was going in the middle of the day, and I ran into another guy in that area, and come to find out, he knew about the deer. He was hunting the deer. He had actually put out some feed for the deer. But regardless of all that, I didn't even go into my spot. I turned around and left, and my camera lasted for another 2 or 3 weeks, but I didn't get another picture of him. He was gone. So something happened. I'm not saying the guy boogered him up or what happened, but it was religious, like to the point that I thought I was going to kill him opening afternoon till the buck was gone. So something happened to him, and so I had to relocate him. And so what I did is I, really just looked at the map and said, okay, this is where my historic data of this buck is, where I've gotten him in the past. This is where he was early season. He should be out of velvet now. So I am going to go in with a backpack full of cameras, and I'm just going to go through this area and find fresh sign and see what I can find and put cameras out, because there is no long-range scouting. And I'm going to transition into, okay, I'm going to get all this set up, maybe put in some mock scrapes. I'm going to get all this set up, and then I'm going to get out of there and try and kill him in the rut. That was my plan. And so I go in and start walking what I think is his core area, and I'm going to do it in one swoop. I'm going to go through there one time, and I'm not going back. And I go in and I get started, and I find a big scrape and a pinch, and it's hard for us to have pinches, and I'm not going to get too specific because I'm certain there are people that listen to this podcast that are hunting this area and this deer. But it was a pinch area. I found a scrape in one major trail. I dropped a camera on it. I picked 2 trees out that I could hunt on either side of it, picked access. I kept going. I got to the spot where I had him feeding early season. I kept going past that, kept going and going, found some more scrapes, found where a little ridge came off into a ditch, in between a ditch and another spot, and there was a couple big rubs and a scrape there. I dumped a camera there, kept going, and I dropped down in this little bowl, and there were 2 giant scrapes. And I thought to myself, okay, this makes sense. This is where that buck is coming out of his bed in the evenings, and he's down in this bowl where all the thermals are dropping down in there, and he's spending his time here till it gets dark, and he's coming out of here. So I put a camera there. I went about another 100 yards, and I jumped him, or what I think was him. I didn't see it, but it was a great big deer in a cane thicket, and the deer went running out of there. So I got out of there and went down a road to kind of the way that he ran, and I popped back in and found like the tightest of all funnels there. And I said, all right, this is where I'm going to kill that deer. And I put a camera in there, and I got out of there, didn't hunt, nothing, let everything go back to normal. And lo and behold, in that really tight spot, that last spot, I got 5 pictures of him in 8 days. Let's see, 5 pictures of him in 8 days. 4 of them were at night, and one of them, the last one I got, was right at dark. And I'm like, okay, I can kill this buck. It is coming. You know, our rut here gets started a little bit early. They'll really start messing around here in the next week or two. And I'm like, okay, I am in the zone. I mean, I'm not calling my shot here, but if all things go right and I can spend 4 or 5 days once they start really poking around, I'm going to kill the buck right here. And so I am super confident. And then what happens? The hurricane comes, and it's out of my control. There's nothing I can do. But we are at almost record flood levels. It's the 2015 flood where we had the 100-year flood. It is at that level, but the problem is it's not leaving. In 2015, it went up and down. You know, we had it, and within 3 days it was gone. Here we're continuing to get that slow pull of water from the upstate and all the rivers, you know, headed to the coast. And so that Congaree has flooded, and it's gotten at pretty historic heights, and it's not falling out. So it's displaced, I know, a ton of deer. I couldn't get all my cameras out, so I'm getting pictures of wood ducks, and I just got one of a rabbit swimming by, a bunch of hogs swimming out. I mean, it's awful. And it's not going to be out until next Friday or Saturday before we can even get in there. Wow. So it's going to have killed a bunch of deer for sure, because what happens, those deer learn where the high spots are when we get these minor floods, and they go get on these levees or these duck pond, you know, dikes or these little high areas, and they're able to survive. Well, they don't know what to do when it gets extremely high, because their safe spot is now no longer safe, and they don't know where the next one is. Now I'm hoping, you know, this deer wasn't around in 2015, obviously, but I'm hoping he just kind of went with the water and he made it out to the hill of the swamp. But I went in yesterday to the hill and dumped a kayak in and went down towards our place, and the current was so bad I about flipped the thing. So I went to one little levee, and there were a bunch of hogs up on that levee. There were coyotes up on that levee. And we're talking about one that's like as wide as your dining room table. You know, they just piled up on this thing because it's their last high ground.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a mess, but it's out of my control. So what I'm going to do, first of all, these deer are going to be starving, right? I mean, because all the acorns are going to be rolled out. The storm knocked them all out of the trees because we had 30-mile-an-hour winds. Then it flooded, and so when the water goes back, it's going to take a bunch of those acorns to the river. So what I'm going to do when I can get back in there is I'm going to go put out probably 15 different feed areas and just get a ton of feed out and put cameras on them and see what see what's left. You know, to the point that I might even meet with DNR or at least the landowners around there and say that, you know, we need to not shoot does for 2 years. You know, it's probably going to be that bad. And the DNR may actually even close the season. I've not even heard that rumor yet, but it would not surprise me if DNR doesn't close the season. So I might be just out of luck on this buck, but hopefully not. Hopefully he made it, and we'll see. But it just, you know, I guess if you went back, the tactics were you were able to do observation in more of an ag area, and I was having to heavily rely on trail cameras and sign and getting, you know, really just busting in there. And again, doing that just one time. If you go in there 3 or 4 times, like if I'd gone in there and said, ooh, look at these scrapes, I'm going to hang a camera on it, and I'm going to come back next weekend and put my stand in here and then come back the weekend after that and hunt, that deer's going to get hip to that, and he's going to blow out of there for sure. So that was really my plan, was to get in there and blow it all up one day and then have my trees, have my winds, have everything ready. And when I went in there next time, I was going in to hunt.
Mm-hmm. And what would have determined when you went in to hunt?
Yeah, so weather would have been the whole thing. And the moon. You know, obviously I followed the overhead, underfoot, the red moon. But the weather, the first, you know, we get down in the 50s one morning and upper 60s in an afternoon. I'd have been right there for that entire week, morning and afternoon, and he would have come through that funnel. I am very, very, very confident in that, other than things outside my control, like somebody else bumping him, somebody else killing him. You know that could happen. And so that's when I would have – I mean, it would have really been this week. You know, we're getting some cooler weather this coming October 1st through the 7th week, and this was the week I had planned on getting in there and hunting him, and I can't even get to the gate.
Yeah, that's a whole set of circumstances I'm not I'm not used to, or never had to deal with that. So
yeah, it's just different. It's just, but it's interesting, I think, for the listeners, the different approaches that you can take, and depending on the terrain that you're dealt with, right? You know, it depends on what you've got to work with, and not necessarily one is better than the other. I think in ag ground, it's easier to locate deer than huge swamp ground, because you've got so many more opportunities to get out, you know, in the evenings. I mean, heck, if you got little kids, you can get out in the evenings, let them ride around in the truck with you and do some glassing and that sort of stuff. And in our swamp, that's just not possible.
Yep. Yeah, that's a whole set of circumstances I've never had to deal with. But I think you kind of hit on something there when you were talking about, you know, I think a hunter's ability to adapt to his situation and circumstances is what really separates, you know, a lot of guys from the rest when it comes to being successful, because there's so many things that can change, you know, during season. You know, hunting pressure, crops, food sources changing, you know, weather, you know, flood in your situation. Just so many things that can change on a daily basis, and a guy's ability to kind of read what's going on and maybe change up at the last minute, you know? I think we all fall into that scenario where, you know, we see a buck, we think we know what he's doing, we think we know what we need to do, and then everything changes at the last minute, or you key on, you know, what you think's going on, and it's completely different. You know, it's just seen that so many times where I've got a, you know, a perceived scenario in my head of how things are going to go, and it ends up being the complete opposite. You know, sometimes it's just a matter of being able to read the situation, maybe have a stand on your back and go in blind into an area and follow your gut. And, you know, it just seems like every time I feel like I got an idea about what's going on, it never ends up being that way. So it makes a huge difference being able to react, you know, to changes at a moment's notice, and just change up and go with your gut and get in there and hunt them instead of, you know, what you thought was going to happen.
Yeah, keeping a positive attitude and not worrying about things that are completely out of your control. You just got to move on, right? You know, I'm already starting to, you know, kick around some other areas in South Carolina to potentially hunt. You know, there's some public ground that we've got here. You know, there's some hill property or some property outside of the Columbia area that I can go get on, and it's just starting from scratch, which, you know, that it is what it is. All it's going to do is make me a better hunter. You know, if I've got to go to a new property, you know, now that the season's in, and try and relocate, find a new buck to hunt, whatever it may be, it's just going to make me a better hunter. And then when we get to the end of October, I'll be transitioning over to Kentucky and Kansas, so we'll be, you know, getting able to hunt out there some, but you don't know what's going to happen out there. So I think the point being is to not worry about what you can't control. It's out of your control, and to keep a positive attitude and stay persistent, stay after it.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm a big I'm a big wind guy. Obviously, we all are. You know, everybody knows the wind is the key to it. But when it comes to, you know, deciding when I'm going to go in to try to kill a deer, you know, there's going to be certain circumstances like what you talked about where you get a good positive change in the weather, like a good, you know, temperature drop where it drops 15, 20 degrees when it's been really warm. Obviously, a weather pattern like that, no matter what's going on with the moon, you know, that's going to increase activity, and you got to key on that. I have noticed over the, you know, last 10 to 20 years hunting specific deer that when I start getting pictures of a mature buck and it's all at night, it's amazing how you can actually watch the closer that moon gets to, like, you know, peaking in the evenings for your red moon, how those deer will start moving closer and closer and closer to moving in daylight. And I can think back to a time where if I got a deer on camera, I'm going in. But when I started waiting and kind of watching how those deer will start getting closer and closer to daylight, and how many times that lines up when the moon is good in the evenings, you can almost predict when they're going to show up in daylight. So, you know, there's times when, for me, the weather is going to trump the moon, but there's times when the moon's going to trump the weather. You know, if you can line it up to where you got the perfect wind, a perfect moon, and a good weather pattern, you know, that's the perfect storm, and you got to be in there. But the whole thing's about, you know, whether I'm hunting in Ohio or you're hunting in South Carolina, it's trying to predict what he's going to do before he ever does it. And like you said, the more times you go in, the more times you take a chance on bumping that deer or him figuring out what you're doing. So if you're really trying to stack the deck in your favor, I've just seen where, like I said, sometimes, you know, you got to pay attention to the weather. Sometimes it's the moon. Sometimes it's everything. But it's really cool to watch, you know, a mature buck that's just being really consistent in the middle of the night, and then how they almost follow that moon to where sometimes, more times than not, it does line up, you know, that they end up showing up in daylight when that moon is right at prime time.
Yeah. Yep. That's very, very good points. And yeah, I mean, it's just pretty neat, I think. You know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is when I started bow hunting, right? It was the challenge of getting close to a deer. I can remember when I was 12 or 13, my dad had a little farm in Georgia, and I had an old wheel bow. It was when compounds had just started, and I snuck into this acorn flat in the afternoon by myself, and there were 2 does in there feeding, and I got the bow drawn, and I think they were about 35 yards away. I got the bow drawn, and the big doe was looking at me, and I was able to release an arrow, and it went about 6 feet over its back, and it turned around and ran off. But I just thought about, this is the best thing ever, bow hunting a deer, period. That was fascinating to me, and I became immediately hooked to that. And, after a while, and I'm getting into a philosophy now instead of sticking on topic, but I'm going to go with it. Andrew's laughing at me. So after a while, I will circle all this back. It became, okay, I want to shoot a Pope and Young buck, right? That became the goal. And I want to go out of state and do it. And then it became, I want to hunt a particular buck, right? And I want to obsess over that one deer and try and figure out that deer and kill that deer. And I am still at that point, I think, in my life, but I feel like a lot of the technology and the bows and that sort of stuff, I'll say this, it's easier now, obviously, than it was 25 years ago. My point being, I have started messing with this traditional equipment, and it's almost like I'm back to being 13 years old again. Not that I want to shoot just a deer. I still want the mission to be the same. I still want to find a buck and hunt a buck. But the ability to get close to him, close enough to him with the same tactics that we're using now, and shoot him with a recurve or a longbow, I mean, it's pretty dadgum fascinating and addictive.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. I'm not at the same place that you're at with a traditional bow, because I know the first time I get in this tree stand with a traditional bow, I'm going to have a 200-inch deer show up at 50 yards, and I'm going to come down there and whip your ass for talking me into shooting one. Yeah. That ain't happening here. I'm not doing it. I haven't reached that point in my career where I want to cut my effective range by 30 or 40 yards. I still, to this day, I mean, that's what it's all about for me, There's I love to deer hunt. I got nothing against anybody that loves to deer hunt and do it however they want. For me personally, I'm not into deer hunting. I'm into hunting a specific deer. That's what it's all about for me, is the challenge of not just finding a big deer, but figuring out what he's doing and beating him at his own game. I mean, when you're in a stand and you get a 5, 6, 7-year-old deer, and I don't care if it's a 150-inch deer in South Carolina or a 210 in Ohio, it's all relative. But when you got an old mature buck that, walks underneath your stand, in bow range, and you've beat him, I mean, there's just nothing that compares to that sense of accomplishment at beating a survival expert like a big old buck is at his own game with a bow and arrow. I mean, that's what it's all about for me. That's what I live for, man. I would much rather do that, beat a big one at his own game than have somebody, put me on a big deer, a giant deer, and he's going to come by here at 7:30 from this direction. Right here is where you're going to shoot him. I mean, I don't want anything to do with that. I want to hang my own stands. I want to do my own scout, and I want to figure him out on my own, because there's nothing like beating him at his own game.
No, that's it. I mean, that's pretty much the essence of the podcast, right? Mission Whitetail. I mean, that is it, is finding that one deer and going after him. And I didn't mean to go down the whole soapbox of the traditional stuff. I think it's just because I've been shooting it so dadgum much. But what was the old saying? I will drive all the way up there to Ohio and whoop your
I will walk. I will walk
to Ohio,
South Carolina to whip your ass.
to whoop your ass. That's an inside joke, but that's a funny one.
Yeah.
I wonder if that guy's still around.
Oh, I'm sure he's being a pain in somebody's ass somewhere.
Oh, too funny. All right, man. It's been about 50 minutes. I know y'all got some stuff to do with Logan's buck this afternoon. Please tell him congratulations. Proud of him. That's awesome. And obviously we'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know Friday or Saturday what this flood does if we're able to get back in there and see if there's any carnage, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good, man. Well, I wish you luck. Hope that water comes down quicker than what they say.
Yeah, me too. I'll keep you posted. All right, guys. Thank you all for listening, and we will be back next time.